A bye week in name only. This is the Pick Six podcast with the Omaha World-Herald. I'm Evan Bland with Sam McKewon and Tom Shatel. And there's no game to talk about this week. Nebraska is not playing on Saturday. They're not playing this weekend, but already some news coming out of this this idle week for Nebraska. Nebraska's been anything but that. Bringing on Dana Holgorsen, former head coach at West Virginia, at Houston. He's going to be an offensive consultant for Nebraska this season. Let's just jump right into it here. I mean, Sam, what was your impression of this hire, and what can it mean for the rest of the season?
I'll make this pretty brisk and quick, but a couple things. One, Rhule told us on Monday that he was going to bring in outside consultants. One of those is Dana Holgorsen, the former West Virginia and Houston head coach, who also coordinated Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, a lot of air raid, spread offenses. They also brought in defensive consultant Phil Snow, who was a longtime Rhule defensive coordinator from the time that Rhule started as head coach at Temple through the time that Rhule was fired with the Carolina Panthers. I think Snow outlasted Rhule there for a couple of weeks, actually. So Rhule and Snow worked together for 10 years. Snow kind of went into semi-retirement, so he did not come along with Rhule to Nebraska. He probably could have and taken the job, but chose not to. But he's also coming in just as that fresh set of eyes that Matt Rhule was talking about. So even though the Holgorsen one was sort of reported, because I think there's probably more legs to Holgorsen having a long-term role that extends past this season. He also brought in Snow, and I think he's talking to a few other people too. And there might be some conversations related to culture that you don't necessarily need to bring somebody on campus for, but just making sure that everything is teed up the way you want leadership wise. And so that's kind of where things are at right now. Holgorsen is somebody that Nebraska thought about hiring back in January. I think that they probably didn't do that job in part because Holgorsen probably wanted more authority and more play calling ability than Nebraska was going to give him. So he took a short-term thing, I think, at TCU. I don't know if that gig is really out there right now. Obviously, TCU has Sonny Dykes, and he's not giving up the play calling. And that team's been kind of a mess this season. So we'll see where it goes with Holgorsen, but certainly a guy that's formidable as a play caller and has a resume and a track record with putting quarterbacks in the NFL, which I'm sure is appealing to the Dylan Raiola camp.
How about you, Tom? I mean, you had sort of a suggestion for Nebraska and how they could approach change this week. They go with Holgorsen. What was your reaction to that move?
I thought it was good. What I don't know is, I mean, as like a larger picture move, I think it's very good. What I don't know is what can he do with this offensive personnel in the next three games. I mean, what is there some kind of magic wand? I don't know that. I mean, that offensive line they are who they are. I think the strengths of the offense right now are the running backs and the offensive line. Once you get them going, the receivers right now are kind of hit and miss. Are they getting open, or is Israel not seeing them, or because they are not getting the ball? They're not making plays. It's kind of a it's heavy on the Thomas Fidone and Jacory Barney right now. So but I think maybe he can help. He can help Dylan. I mean, he's had a lot of very good quarterbacks, and so I'm hoping that maybe he can see some things. Another set of eyes. Here's what I think you you can do well. Maybe kind of pare it down to a couple schemes or packages and just try to do something really well. But I don't know that they have the personnel to go air raid. They got the quarterback to do it, certainly, but right now he's kind of banged up too. So it's a good move. I'm curious to see how much power he's got. Is he going to
Right.
call the plays at USC? The story said that his role is going to evolve. So that means he's going to be the the OC by the end of the season. He's going to call plays. It's all very interesting. But it doesn't solve the issue of why um, that team did not, why that team came out flat against against UCLA. So, maybe these consultants come in and kind of observe and they have suggestions on what this team should be doing to get ready for games like that. But that's why they're paying Matt Rhule also, right? So I
Right.
was a little surprised at Rhule's tone on Monday. Sort of, he's very honest. He's very transparent, but he doesn't know what's going on there, and it's it's in the middle of a rebuild that he's done before. So I was also surprised that he's surprised. But it's college football. These are kids. Um, I think there's still some hangover from and I want to blame it on the previous coach, but the kids from that era still don't know what it takes yet, and so they came out a step slow on Saturday. So, but I think that this is a good shake-up move, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was just I mean, the Holgerson piece is interesting because there's a little bit of history there. Like you mentioned, Sam, they brought him in the winter and it looked like maybe something would materialize and it wasn't the right time. I think it's easy to look ahead and say, what does this mean for 25? But like in the moment here, I'm curious just to see what that impact that he could have on this team would be. He's an air raid guy, like you mentioned, Tom. Nebraska doesn't necessarily have the personnel for that. So is he maybe some of that impact comes with game planning. That was something that Rule suggested on Monday. Maybe it's not about the play calls specifically in the games. Maybe it's about what's the approach going into the game. How do you view the opposing defense and kind of set that thing up. So like, is this a situation? This feels like an offseason move that would get Nebraska fans excited. The fact that it comes with a quarter of the season left, like, and this was a question that we had on X from Dustin Noah here today, but what realistically kind of changes can we expect to see in these last three games, if any?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that Holgerson can do. One, he can maybe bring some drills to the way that Nebraska's quick passing game on the perimeter is functioning, and he can change the way they practice. He can add some drills to what they're doing. He can create maybe some concepts or the way of explaining how they want to get things done. I think what I've seen from Nebraska and this staff, this is my opinion. I'm not a coach and I'm not a former player. I say that often. To me, their quick passing game is deficient. It's nowhere near where Mark Whipple's quick passing game was. And if people remember, the reason Nebraska beats Iowa in 22, and that was the best win Nebraska's had in like 6 years, is early in the game they're hitting quick throws, and then they get Trey Palmer over the top and Marcus Washington over the top and over the middle. And the reason that game works is because they throw the ball quick early and they're really good at it. And then you can go back, obviously, to Mike Riley, and they had their foibles for sure. But you can go back and watch first game of Mike Riley's era when they played BYU, and you can see that they had a system. And Scott Frost had a system. It kind of got screwed up at times because Adrian Martinez wasn't a great short passer, but Scott Frost knew how to run that stuff too. This is the most efficient short passing game I've seen in a while. They're just not very good at it, and they're not. And people don't have to like those passes, but when teams pack the box, that's how you get it. That's how you get an extra fender out of the box. Get safety out of the box, and that's part of how you do it. And they haven't done very good there, so that's something he can work on with them. Yeah, I think he can probably inject a little bit of tempo into what they do. And I thought Nebraska's, when they play with a little bit of tempo, they seem a little better. Not a ton of tempo, not breakneck speed, but a little bit of tempo, I think would be helpful for this group, and it might be helpful for Dylan. He's got to get off his horse, get on his horse a little bit, is what I put on Twitter after the UCLA game or during it. They got to get going. Like you watch that offense, it's just way too slow. Huddle up, and then people are jogging jogging to their spots, and there's just not any kind of urgency. And I understand you're trying to bleed clock, but there's a way that you go about it, a crispness of execution. Tom's talked about this so many times. It's how it looks, and it just doesn't look like it looks like sludge. And so Holgerson may be able to get them going because when you bring in somebody from the outside, the freedom that you give that person is to say anything. That's the one thing you get. You can say whatever you want because you're not really a part of this yet. So like you don't own any of this, so go ahead and break it. And so that's one thing he can go in and do is he can just say anything. You guys look like this, you guys look like that. He can say that to the coaches. Those are probably the biggest things. I don't know about play calling. We've all watched Dana Holgerson over the years. Tom certainly has. Everybody remembers the 2010 Oklahoma State Nebraska game. Holgo's calling the plays during that game. I mean, that was a wild affair. And they called some great stuff, and they made Nebraska's Bo Pelini's defense look pretty bad. Nebraska won the game as Taylor Martinez played out of his mind, but everybody knows that Holgerson can do the job. So those are my thoughts. I'm curious what Tom thinks of it.
No, I think this is going to be a good move for Dylan Raiola. I think a veteran offensive play caller, a guy who has coached quarterbacks, and somebody like you said. I think he's going to get the pace up of that offense and get their attention to the detail. Are they running the right routes? Are they running good routes? Are there going to be new routes that maybe that might break those two receivers open a little bit? So, yeah, it's really an interesting mix because, um, you know, Holgerson in the Big Ten. Now we've seen Tim Beck in the Big Ten. Um, Mike Riley's offense in the Big Ten, and they certainly won some games. Do you need to run the ball? Is this the kind of things? Yeah. What I don't know is, you see, if you're bringing him in as a consultant and he's going to have power and he's going to change some things, is this the end of Marcus Satterfield? I mean, how does he come back from this? I mean, what kind of confidence do you have in him after this? And I'm not saying he leaves the staff, but as offensive coordinator, can I don't know that he's going to come back from this. I don't know. I think this is, I don't know, a tryout. Daniel Holgerson doesn't need a tryout, but I think that this is quite possibly the beginning of him as the offensive coordinator going forward. And I think it's a bold move, but I think the situation called for a bold move. Again, they could not keep doing what they were doing on offense, and I believe and have any hope to win another game. So this is the right move, and
Yeah.
I believe that there's something that goes with this. I don't know that. I think this is the transition to somebody else being the OC. We will see. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think it's going to be Holgerson, and if it's the right fit, and interestingly. He's going to go up against Lincoln Riley. That's not a Big Ten team offense. It's going up against Wisconsin. Well, that's suddenly not a Big Ten type offense. They're spreading it out and trying to throw it. Then you got, of course, Iowa, that defense. But we've seen it work. It's just Matt Rhule's desire to have a power run game. Inside the 10, 15. It's going to be interesting to see if that's what Dana Holgerson brings to it. But God dang it, wouldn't you just love to see him go under center with the fullback, last week, on the 5-yard line? Why can't we have that? And I'm not saying you have to be that all the time,
Right.
but just have that element of the offense to be able to do that when you have to do it. So, yeah, we'll see.
I mean, I think that the likelihood of Satterfield being the play caller next year seems very low to me. I totally agree that you come to the bye week, and I think that the impression after the UCLA game is, well, we can't keep doing this. This is, I think he probably carried it out long enough. I think there might have been a change after the season either way. Obviously, you don't bring Holgerson in with 3 games left unless you're willing to shake it up. It'd be a kind of a bad look if they do bring him in, and then in December he leaves, and then they just go back to what they were doing. That would seem very odd to me.
Yeah, you
So,
can't do that,
no,
especially if you win a game.
right.
You go to a bowl game,
That looks bush league.
you might as well
You
stay,
know.
Dana.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where it's going to go.
Yeah.
What exactly his role will be or whatever, but
Right.
yeah, I think they had a chance to do all of these things in the offseason last year. And I think what they did was they banked on, well, we signed these transfers from Wake Forest and Texas, and Dylan will help us out with the pass game. He'll make that a little bit better. And we'll run the ball pretty well. And we like the players that we have. And we've got enough pieces to put it all together and run this sort of quasi 49ers offense. And, newsflash, the 49ers offense isn't very good if it doesn't have Christian McCaffrey. And they haven't had him all year, and they're hot and cold because they don't have him. And if you need, the 49ers, they were in the Super Bowl last year, and they're struggling because they don't have the best running back in football. Well, if you need the best running back in football, that tells you something about that offense. Nebraska didn't have all the pieces to do all the things they want to do for Marcus Satterfield's offense. They just don't. And it's also Matt Rhule's offense. And again, this is that moment. There was a sea change in the early 2010s where Alabama lost a couple of games to Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss, and Hugh Freeze isn't that good of a head coach, as his work at Auburn is showing. But Nick Saban had to change, and he knew it. And he did. He changed. He changed to Lane Kiffin. And then he hired Lane Kiffin. And then when Lane Kiffin was gone, he hired Steve Sarkisian. And he hired guys that come in and throw the football and knew how to do it and use those receivers the way they did. And that changed almost every opinion out there, with the exception of Jim Harbaugh, on how to win football games at an elite level. Harbaugh tilted it back a little bit in the other direction because Michigan really was the team running 3 tight ends and fullbacks and all this other stuff. But they haven't been able to duplicate that this season now that Harbaugh's gone. And they're probably looking at 6-6 at Michigan because they don't have all the pieces that they did last year. And so you cannot, in my opinion, sustain elite success over and over and over unless you have Jim Harbaugh, apparently, as your head coach, or you have all the pieces. You have to have literally 5 tight ends. And Michigan did. You got to have more tight ends than Nebraska does. And Thomas Fidoni's good, and Borkircher's good. God bless them both. They don't have enough tight ends. And you got to have great tight ends to run that offense. You got to have really good backs. You got to have good receivers. You got to be physical. And they just don't have quite enough players. And so what we see is what we see. And it leaves Dylan Raiola just in a bad spot. You should be able to throw the ball out of the shotgun and get this kid some rhythm throws, and they don't really get him. So I was, as Tom said, and I'm curious for more thoughts from him about this. Matt Rhule on Monday made comments about the players having to play. And then when he was asked a question about the transfer portal, it was a well-asked question about the transfer portal and concerns about convincing players to stay. And he goes, we're not going to chase people on our roster. And then he said, players here are treated really well. And they are. And then he said, all I need is 22 guys to play. Woo! What did you think of that?
Yeah, I think that the roster is still in flux. I think it's still incomplete. They need more. They need more of everything. And I just, except the quarterback spot, I think they're obviously fine.
Right.
But I think there's a great opportunity here, especially if you get Holgerson to stay, and then you've got Dylan Raiola as your point man, your lead recruiter, to go into the portal and say, all right, guys, who wants to join up? I'm the quarterback. He's the play caller. Let's go. And I think you could get a pretty good haul of uh, receivers out of the portal and other sort of playmakers, slot men, got McCaffrey. I don't know how many McCaffrey type guys are out there, but I'm just saying they're going to be guys who are going to transfer immediately when the as soon as the gate goes up, and they have the NIL. Certainly, I think you can get the offensive line. If you got to plug in some people, if you're not sure about Teddy, if you're not sure about this, they probably got to get a center. Um, I mean, it's a situation where I'm Dylan Raiola has proven to be a able recruiter and somebody who's very willing to put himself out there and be the leader. And so I think there's an opportunity after the season to really bolster the roster uh, using Dylan. Um, so, yeah, I mean, chase people off. You don't have to chase people off. People probably go on their own sometimes. We don't know what's going to happen in the last 3 games, but I don't think this roster will be the same. And I know it's not going to be the same. Um, and Matt Rhule has shown a desire to change right now. He's urgency. I like it. I didn't see it Saturday. I'm seeing it now. It's a balance. When you're building, yeah, you're building a culture. Well, the culture's in. By year 2, the culture's in. Everybody knows how you want to play. If you're still not doing it, then they need to find some other people. But uh, yeah, you know, I, I'm not going to disparage Baylor football, but this is Nebraska, and people expect more. They expect to win all the time. They want to build, but they want to win. And I think Rule is really finding that out. It's an interesting thing. I mean, they around. I said 7-5, and I was going to say 6-6. They're right still there, and they lost to Illinois and UCLA. Those are probably games I thought they would win. Um, but now USC and Wisconsin don't look quite as good, so maybe they can get 1 or 2 of those. But they're going to be a lot different, a lot different. But you know, and we talk about this later too. But if they just win one more game, it's going to be against USC or Wisconsin or Iowa. And they're going to go to a bowl. That would change the mood considerably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
making a bowl for the first time in 8 years is going to be an accomplishment no matter what.
And look who you would beat to get that done.
Yeah, a name team.
Absolutely.
Yep.
hey,
Yes, you're not beating Purdue. Yep, I get it.
one more thought on the Holgerson thing that I thought was interesting, guys, was like, it feels like you can come down on one of two sides. You can either come down on the side that says, why do they need to bring in outside eyes if they're paying the offensive coordinator 1.4 million and you've got the biggest football specific staff that Nebraska's ever had, so on and so forth. This is a, program builder. Why do they need that? But I think the other side is interesting too, because you could say, hey, hey, in 2007, what if Bill Callahan brought in some outside eyes to give it a fresh perspective? What if Bo Pelini had done that? What if Scott Frost did that toward the end of his tenure, as opposed to saying, kind of plowing ahead and saying what we do is the best and the only way, and we're going to go with that. Like, do you guys view this move in the larger sense as sort of a sign of, oh man, this is a situation where they don't know what's going on, or is this sort of self-aware humility where they're saying, hey, maybe there's something out there that we're not seeing and they're open to change?
Urgency is the word I would use. I think there's an understanding that making a bowl this year is very important. And also you're beginning a process that I think Tom and I both agree is going to continue into the offseason. So like getting this done, getting it done now, using a second bye week to begin that process of of preparing your team for something different. I don't know that Dana Holgerson is, difficult on players, but he's a unique personality. So they're going to have to get used to him. I wouldn't describe him as, Mark Helfrich or something. Just, hey, guys, like Holgerson's a pretty intense guy. So I'm guessing it's some of that. I think there's some urgency there. And again, these are decisions that in theory could have been made last year. Nebraska's offense last season was the worst offense they've had in 60 or 55 years or whatever it was. I can't remember how many it was. It's been a very, very long time since they had an offense as bad as this one, as last year. Then they come into this season, and I'm sorry, it just didn't really change that much. I mean, Dylan Raiola got him some scores early. Tom had it in his column on a Monday, 18 offensive touchdowns in the first however many games. But, they've regressed. I mean, teams adjusted to him. They've adjusted to Nebraska's personnel. And Satterfield doesn't sound like he's really dialed in to Raiola. Like I don't know if he's really coaching him. It's never good for the offensive coordinator to say, I haven't had a conversation with him about literally anything, but including that he can scramble. It's just not a good phrase to hear. So I don't know if he was on the outs or whatever it was, or he was feeling whatever. But I think urgency is the word here. And I think bringing in Phil Snow, we don't really want to talk about the defense because there's sort of the B plus student here, but if you start cranking up the offensive performance, Evan, I'm just telling you, your defense is going to give up more points. This defense is going to give up more points. If Dylan Raiola and company was putting up 35 a game, that defense wouldn't be giving up what they're giving up. They just wouldn't, because the games where they cranked it up and they were moving the ball on Illinois was hitting Nebraska's defense back. The defense has to get better. I know it seems hard to say that, and Tony White's a great guy, and he's a what do you call it, innovative coordinator. But they're about to lose like 6 guys that are going to the NFL or onto a different life, and that group of players is a core piece of this group. And I can't tell you right now exactly who the 6 guys are that are going to replace them, but I don't think they're quite good enough on that side of the ball. So here's Phil Snow to help with that.
Yeah, those guys may not be on the roster. Hey, I wanted real quick, Sam, you mentioned Nebraska could have made those changes offensively last season or in the
Yeah.
offseason. Wouldn't that have been difficult in the sense that, like, we didn't have any idea what Nebraska wanted to do offensively because they were patching it together. They were running the option. They were putting Harburg out there. Jeff Sims' experiment didn't go well. Like, I
Yeah.
kind of felt my sense in the offseason was like we had no idea what Nebraska really wanted to do because they didn't have the personnel to execute it. So it didn't feel premature to make that move a year ago, or did you feel like you saw enough and maybe Nebraska saw enough to where they could have reasonably made a change, even though they didn't have guys in place to do what they wanted to do?
I mean, I think you make a good point. I mean, I think I, who was the coordinator last year? I don't know. Ron Brown at times. I don't know. Like it just wasn't. I mean, it's not like Marcus Satterfield was going back into the archives to the '88 Arizona State game and finding the cutback toss pitch. So I think they've been trying to scramble for a while. And Ron Brown wasn't the offensive coordinator. What I'm saying is that, you know, they've been trying to figure out what to do with the offense now for a couple of years. And I assume that Matt Rhule signed off on Marcus Satterfield signing Jeff Sims, thinking that that would be some sort of answer. And of course, it wasn't. That's not on Glenn Thomas. He was with the Steelers. So that was on Satterfield. Again, it's all water under the bridge now. It's hindsight. But they kicked the tires on Dana Holgerson last January for a reason. And it wasn't because they were just like, like they wanted to figure some things out. So, but you make a really good point. I just think that what we have seen is that it hasn't been quite enough. And then you see what Indiana's doing, and it just, like that team is kicking ass. They just scored 47 on Michigan State. That's pretty good football. They're good. And that coach deserves a lot of credit. They play good football. So I don't know.
Hey, here's a social media question related to what we're talking about here. This is from Aiden Coxis on X. He says, has the fan base expectations hurt Rhule in the short term? He is trying to win right now, but with older players that he knows that have deficiencies. Is it time to rip the cord and play the younger guys who are more prone to play free and not get in their feels? And I think you think about what he's done in press conferences. Matt Rhule talks about Ja'Cory Barney and Vincent Shavers and some of these true freshmen. I think that the question is there's a tension here between like your Nebraska trying to get to a bowl game. You have these veterans, but at the same time, maybe you trust that the young guys will play the freest and easiest. What do you do when you're kind of in this middle ground of playing the young guys, but still trying to win now and show progress?
Well, yeah, I need to know more about who the younger guys are that are going to play. I don't know. Are they going to be better? You know, younger guys make mistakes, and I don't think Husker fans are going to be in the mood for that right now. I just think he's, but this is the dilemma a lot of coaches now find themselves in, where you can't necessarily redshirt kids anymore because if they want to play and if they don't play, they're going to leave. Um, I think he needs to, you know, I, I think there's enough there to win one more game. I thought that it probably should have been last week, but I don't know that having a bunch of young guys is going to help them beat USC or Wisconsin or Iowa either. Um, they've got to figure out, in my opinion, I think they need to, um, look, and if there weren't expectations, would they play a bunch of young guys right now? I don't know. I don't know that they would. I think that they need to take the guys they have and make them better right now. I think they can, given a offensive identity and figure out what the heck is going on with that defense, why they show up every other game. Um, I think there's something internal with this team that is not quite right, and I'm not sure younger guys are going to, or um, yeah, you're. I'm kind of all over the place here because it's an interesting question, but the thing about building for the future right now in college football is so sometimes the future transfers out. So you don't know what you're building sometimes. You don't, okay, we're going to
Right.
play these guys, so they'll be ready next year. Oops, they just left. And then we have to find somebody else. So almost better trying to win now and then worrying about things after the season. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it does. Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's a case to be made for playing some younger guys, but they played Jeremiah Charles for 8 snaps on Saturday, and UCLA picked on him, and then they took him out of the game.
Mhm.
I don't know how many players they have over there that can just, okay, so Vincent Shavers, sure, start him. He has a single digit. And again, this is an indictment of me. I don't know why he has a single digit. I
Well, he
did
switched numbers with Jamari Butler.
right. Was that Jamari Butler bestowing the single digit on him? Did the players revote and give it to Shavers? Um,
It's not my impression, but I don't know.
I don't know, but he has a single digit. Barney has been great. I mean, Barney plays, man. He's not a giant kid either. He plays, and you need more guys like that, and you need more dudes who can go and make plays the way that Ja'Cory Barney makes. If those guys are on the sidelines, not playing, why are they not playing? I don't know. I don't think they are, but if they're not, my goodness, get them on the field. Like you only have 3 games left, so you're not burning any red shirts anyway. If there's somebody over there that can do what Ja'Cory Barney's doing, only they're taller, play him. And so I don't know exactly what he means by that. I think part of what he's trying to talk about is there seems to be some sort of, as Tom said, not quite right, maybe some grumbling, maybe some frustration. And I'll just say this, when you got 23 and 24-year-old guys on your roster, that's to be expected. They're not you know, you remember what you were like when you were 24, and you probably remember what you were like when you were 19. You get to 24 and you're 22, 23, 24, you're a man. Like you're kind of ready to go on with your life. And, you know,
You
you kind
know,
of know what you know. So like some of these guys are probably like, hey, we want to get on our horse. We want to win some games. What the hell are we doing? Like, so I think there's probably some of that.
I
Uh, yeah.
I think one of the interesting things about what Rule did a year ago when he was going to keep the guys here, and he said, "I'm going to coach these guys." Um, is okay, but some of the old habits aren't gone yet, and so you know, Chris Signetti brought in his guys. And Matt Rhule didn't have his guys. He came from Carolina. He couldn't bring the Panthers, so he didn't have guys.
And that'd
Yeah.
be something.
So a Kurtz fan, we probably maybe didn't want the Panthers. I don't know, but Kurt Signetti had his guys,
They did.
and yeah, they were James Madison guys. They sure as hell knew what he wants,
Oh, yeah.
and and that's urgency. And I'll tell you something else. They're older, and he had a instant, instant ready older team. And Nebraska is just you got the Dylan Raiola coming in, but you've got these older guys that aren't used to winning, trying to figure out how to win, close games. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge. Um, but the teams that have beaten Nebraska all seem to have one thing in common: an older quarterback.
Yeah.
Illinois,
Great points.
older, 5 or 6 year guy, however many years a guy, Altmaier. Um, uh, uh,
Yes.
Ohio State, older guy. Of course, Ohio State's, but UCLA, older guy. He came out there firing and didn't blink, and he all fired up. And that's there's something to be said for that. And
Yes.
Nebraska doesn't have that. That's fine. Maybe hopefully one day they will. He'll stay long enough, and he'll be that older guy. He'll probably be the older guy next year. I mean, he's already very mature. Dylan Raiola is for his age, but he won't take 5 years to be that older, crafty, wise quarterback. He'll be probably that guy next year. Um, so I think there's something to be said for that too. But I just can't figure out what is going on. There's something in the engine of this car that it just misses.
Do you think the players are almost treated too well?
Well, I thought that was interesting the other day. So should I be harder on him? And that's
Yeah.
that's here's a guy who was brought in because he knows how to build, and he's questioning himself in the middle of the second year. Um, that surprised me. And that told me, okay, I'm still coaching somebody else's players, which he did by choice. It still doesn't know these guys yet. Still trying to figure things out. Um, Eventually he'll have his guys. Right now he's trying to coach somebody else's guys still,
Mm.
and they're his guys now. But yeah, what in the world's going on with the team that doesn't show up every week? That's leadership. I mean, it's coaching, but at some point the coaches, what are they going to tell them? They've already told them this is what you should be doing. Now go do it. So players have to go play at some point. But I just don't understand not coming out for that game. What possibly could be in their heads knowing that they coming off 2 losses? I mean, did they think everything was okay after Ohio State? I don't know. Um,
I thought their coach was awfully praiseworthy of him.
yeah,
I was surprised by the level of congratulations he gave his team in the wake of a loss. Now,
yeah. I thought he was trying to build them up a little bit. I was trying to build up their
yeah,
confidence a little bit, but
yep.
maybe that was who knows?
They
Maybe
played really well though. Like they played
yeah.
so well at Ohio State. It's best game they played all year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe the first half against Colorado. I mean, they played really well. Ohio State's really good.
You
Uh,
know, and I wonder how much having the healthy secondary will help.
mhm.
I wonder how much Tommy Hill out there. I mean, Colorado. I mean, they were all over everything, and I just feel
Yeah.
like there was a swagger there
Mhm.
that they need to get back. Anyway,
No, I think the point about the quarterback is a really good one. And the reality is Nebraska was going down that path until Dylan Raiola decided he didn't want to go to Georgia anymore. And Nebraska could have told Dylan, listen, the track record of almost every quarterback who goes to the NFL and does well is that they basically play for 3 years or four, and they basically sit out the first year. They don't start. They learn. But they didn't do that. They didn't give him the job, but if it had been Danny Kaelin was going to go sit behind Kyle McCord. That's basically what was going to happen. And McCord is having an interesting year at Syracuse. I think he has like 21 or 27 touchdown passes to 12 interceptions. But he's just slinging it around the yard. I mean, they're just letting him do whatever he wants, and he's doing okay. And they could have had that. They didn't. They ultimately took Raiola's commitment, and McCord was like, "Yeah, I'm out of here. I'm obviously not going to be the guy." And so I mean, that's kind of what happened, and that Nebraska is going to have to live with that reality.
well, it was the right move. I mean, and then you're thinking, okay, we're going to try to go 7-5 and go to a bowl game and get and get the kid experience,
Right.
and boy, watch out next year. I, and
Yep.
I and again, I think he helps bring in transfers. It was absolutely the right move. And in some ways, it feels like he's been the offensive coordinator some games. It feels like he's ahead of the game, but then the game caught up the last couple weeks. Defenses have caught up. I do agree, and people don't always agree with this, but I do agree that he is growing, and that these things can be good for him. But the Nebraska fans would be a lot more on board with that if they could win a damn game and go to a bowl game.
If they had beaten UCLA and they were 6-3 and qualified for a bowl, and there's only one game they got to win on the way out, you're completely right. And in the sense of like, they're going 7-5, and they got through the bumps and bruises of Dylan's first year, and next year it's going to be,
Right.
really, really good. Yep, I agree. I don't know why they didn't play the way they did against UCLA. Back to your question about the older players, Evan. Maybe this isn't the question you asked. I think we would all agree that Ty Robinson is absolutely a better player than he was last year. Like Ty's having a great year.
No doubt.
23 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 2 knockdown passes, block kick. Like Ty's having a great year. John Bullock's probably having, about as good of a year as he did last year. Although Bullock has tailed off a little bit here in the last however many, but he's had some moments. The other older guys, are they playing as well as they did last year? Did they kind of peak, and are they sort of plateauing? I don't know. I mean, well, I think the last 3 games will tell us the story. If they don't win any of the last 3 games, they finish 5-7, then I think you could say that the veteran project probably didn't quite work as way you wanted it to. So that'll be something to watch. It's there's a lot of things going on right now, and we'll have lots of time to talk about it later on about big picture issues and whatever. But Nebraska's
Like,
offense just has not been good enough in too many circumstances.
I mean, the defensive side to me, like, how often have we seen Nash Huntmaker make a big play in the last month? Where's Cam Lenhart and Prince Will Uman been? Like they had great freshman seasons, and like
Yeah.
it's kind of leveled off a little bit this year.
Hey,
And
I don't disagree with anything you just said. Yeah, like there's going to be that's probably a conversation probably going to happen in the last 3 weeks of like, yep, because Ty and Nash are leaving. I mean, Nash has played okay. His season last year was almost an anomaly. It was so good. Ty is kind of coming in that direction now, but Ty and Nash will not be there next year. So yeah, like you don't get those guys who I mean, Evan, at this moment, I don't know who their 6'6", 325-pound defensive lineman is. And I don't know who their 6'4", 330-pound lineman is. Hutmaker and Robinson are those two guys right now. When they leave the field, they're putting guys in there that are 265 pounds that are interior linemen. I don't understand like what the larger vision is for that position once those two guys leave, because it's like they haven't, other than Riley Van Poppel, they haven't really recruited that player. Like, I guess it'll be Riley Van Poppel. That's my only impression. Like, I
Deanna
just don't.
Davis eventually. I mean, yeah, it's
Maybe. I mean, I've always he kind of feels like an outside guy, but maybe maybe he's an inside guy. I don't know. I mean, Ndamukong, I know somebody compared him to Ndamukong Suh, which I thought was not a good thing. Ndamukong Suh was 6 foot. I mean, he was 6'4" and 25 pounds. He's the best athlete I've ever seen. I don't know.
yeah.
Remember what he looked like? I mean, what
Oh,
that night
thick.
at the Missouri? Tom remembers when he comes out and he just wrecked Blaine Gabbert's life, and about 100 reporters, because ESPN was in town, and he comes out and it was just like, that guy's about the best athlete. I don't know if that guy's on the roster.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I think we'll talk about recruiting later. I mean, I think they've got to recruit dudes, and they've got some dudes, but more dudes.
it's kind of like former President Ted Carter's line about fixing the plane while they're flying it. Like that's kind of what Nebraska's doing right here. You're trying to win games, trying to build up for the future.
Yep.
That's all going on.
Let's do picks.
Let's do picks.
The day is late and the hour is late. Evan, you're up by 6.
All right.
Well, you're up by 4 on me and 6 on Tom. You are the Kirk Signetti of the group.
Got to build it up to blow it in bowl season. That's how it always goes.
Usually. Colorado at Texas Tech. I'm going to take Texas Tech.
Colorado.
Colorado for me.
Georgia at Ole Miss. I'm taking Ole Miss.
Ooh,
Georgia.
everybody's taking Ole Miss. Yeah, I learned my lesson at Texas. I'll take Georgia.
Oklahoma at Missouri.
Oh, oh,
At Mizzou, I'll take Mizzou.
Or Missouri as well.
take away my card. I'm taking Oklahoma. I don't trust Missouri one little bit.
Holy War. BYU at Utah. That's what they used to call it. I guess they don't call it that anymore. BYU at
Cougars
Utah.
for me. Cougars.
BYU.
BYU for Evan. Utah for Sam. Iowa at UCLA. I'm taking Iowa.
Hawks.
I'm taking Iowa the rest of the way. Playing great, and the run game is back, baby. The run game is back. It never left. I always talk about Iowa quarterbacks. Why do you need a quarterback? You got a running game.
Mm-hmm. Washington at Penn State.
Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State. Circle the wagons.
James Franklin's a different guy. Michigan at Indiana. I take Penn State, and I'll also take Indiana.
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 Imagine saying that 2 years or a year ago, 2 years ago. It's just crazy.
Did you see that confrontation James Franklin had with the kid in the caddy hat?
Oh my God.
Kid's in the stands yelling at him, and Franklin goes up to him and asks him for his name. And this kid looks ridiculous. He's got all plaid on and a plaid cabbie hat. He's clearly a troll. And he walks away, and James Franklin rings some bell. Him and Mike Gundy.
He should have got Jason Kelsey to handle him.
Yeah, that was
There
the
you go.
third incident of the weekend. I mean, this kid was clearly a clown. and James Franklin got caught up in it.
Why do you do that?
I don't
Why?
know.
Well, I mean, as a coach, why do you stop and do that?
Yeah, look at the way this kid's dressed. I can't believe he thought he was serious. He wasn't even dressed in Penn State gear. He was dressed like a like out of a Saturday Night Live sketch. Iowa State at Kansas. Oh, I'm sorry, an Arrowhead.
KU. I'm going down there.
Iowa
Dad's
State.
weekend. I root for the Jayhawks, I guess. All
I'm going to take Iowa State because they lost the game that I thought they were going to lose to KU last week.
right.
Minnesota at Rutgers. I'm on the boat.
Tell you what. Second half coach of the year, maybe, huh? Yeah, Minnesota. Boy, Rutgers turned into a mess in a hurry.
Did.
Yep, same, Minnesota.
Here's the thing about the boat. Nobody's going to outculture that guy. That guy's got more slogans and whatever than anything. But the one thing I've always appreciated about Fleck is he has an identity on offense. They do the same dang thing every single year, and sooner or later it works. And the last game, Alabama at LSU, one of my favorite games of the year. Every single time they play it, it's in Tiger Stadium, maybe the best stadium in college football. Bama at LSU, who you got?
Uh, 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 LSU.
That's good. Tigers. Yeah, I think it's a venue game.
I'm going to take LSU too. So there we go. We got some interesting differences this week on a couple of them, and I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Well, it will be fun. And for the Nebraska fans out there, man, enjoy a weekend off, enjoy some other college football. Maybe get away from it, do whatever you want to do. And then we got the closing stretch of the season. Can't wait. For Tom and Sam, I'm Evan. This is the Pick Six Podcast. Thanks for listening.